What's up guys, I'm Ben from AuthenTech and this is the Insta360 ONE R. Now I already reviewed the 4K and the 360 mod, you can check that video out later, but today we're going to be checking out this 1-inch sensor that a lot of people are intrigued about. Now, is it a game changer? Let me spoil the ending for you, and it's okay. For certain people in certain situations, the 1-inch mod, well, it's gonna be awesome. It might be the perfect fit. But for the average consumer out there, I'm not sure if it's worth spending those extra dollars. Let me show you why. Quick disclaimer, no sponsorship here, but huge thanks to Insta360 for sending me these sample units to test. All firmwares and softwares are still constantly being tweaked nowadays, so if anything looks a little bit off on the ONE R, well, it might be fixed just around the corner, who knows. In this video, I'll show you guys side-by-side comparisons, daytime and low-light photos and video, HDR, stabilization, audio tests, slow motion, hyperlapse, and more of the ONE R 1-inch versus the GoPro HERO 8. And another quick spoiler alert, if you're looking for just an ordinary action camera shooting flat photos and videos, well then the GoPro probably is gonna be your better bet. But, and that's a huge but, if you want to shoot 360, have future modularity potential, reverse the screen for selfie shots, wireless mic options, okay, so you can see where this might be going. This is why there's always more to the story, so let's dive right in. Starting with the pricing, as this adds the context. Insta360 ONE R 1-inch edition, buy right now at $550. The GoPro HERO 8 Black, $400. That's actually a pretty big difference. Now let's jump into some daytime video comparisons. This is 5.3K 30 FPS on the 1-inch and 4K 30 on the GoPro. A few things I noticed right off the bat. The GoPro consistently has more contrasty and saturation look. Some people like this, some people don't. The ONE R allows you to turn on a color plus option, which adds some new vibrancy and dynamic range to your shots. In this one, I left it off so you can see more of the raw original video clip next to the default settings on the GoPro. Now sometimes I like the poppy colors and contrasts of the GoPro, but sometimes it does it a bit too far. For example, the shadows can be a bit too crushed and we can lose important details. Now one quick note, remember how I said the firmwares are constantly getting pushed out for the 1-inch right now? Well, currently, if I export a 5.3K video file from the ONE R onto my phone and then export it, well, it doesn't come out as 5.3K res, but it's 4K. Now, if I try their desktop app on the Mac, I can export the video in H.265 5.3K res video, which is good. So for transparency's sake, all my 5.3K res files are gonna be scaled down to 4K files, which honestly, they look really good and sharp, but this way we can actually see some good stabilization on the 1-inch. Since I'm pretty sure that stabilization is being processed after the clip is recorded. Speaking of clarity, if you're exporting clips to the garbage compression, let's say of Instagram, no one is probably ever gonna notice the difference from 5.3K to 4K to whatever. However, if you're watching this video in full 4K, you should be able to spot some of these nice little differences. The 1-inch looks razor sharp and crispy. If we freeze frame and zoom in, you should be able to see what I'm talking about. It's not like it's jumping from SD up to HD, but it is a nice improvement and step up in the 1-inch sensor. On a negative note, I noticed there's a fair bit of artifacting on the 1-inch footage, but again, I'm unsure if this is just a temporary compression issue, and hopefully we'll see a fix in a firmware or app update soon. Jumping to stabilization, even though they both look pretty smooth, I think I'd have to vote the GoPro as a bit more buttery smooth. The 1-inch isn't bad and honestly has a wider field of view here, but man, GoPro has really put some nice R&D into their hyper smooth stabilization, and it almost looks like it was shot on a gimbal, which is always very impressive. Insta's flow state isn't bad at all, and honestly usually really impressive, especially when shooting in 360, but here, the 1-inch, it looks like some firmware updates could help it out a bit. This is audio on the Insta360 ONE R with the 1-inch. How does the audio sound? And this is audio on the GoPro HERO 8 Black. How does the audio sound? Now it's pretty windy out here down at the lake. Which one is sounding better? Now it's pretty windy out here down at the lake. which one is sounding better? Funny enough, I think both receive like a B- here. In one sentence, the One R sounds better, but then the next GoPro sounds better. Audio test 1, 2, 3, 4. Audio test 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the One R wins in two other big audio categories. First, they offer this USB-C to 3.5mm mic jack dongle for only 10 bucks. So that way you can use any third-party audio microphone, very sweet. If you're considering the GoPro audio mod, well, they're still not even out yet, and that's gonna cost you $80. That's absurd and way too expensive. I've been experimenting with the Rode Wireless Go microphones on the One R, and so far I've been really pleased. The second big feature that Insta is saying is coming in February is wireless Bluetooth audio. Now imagine popping in your AirPods or whatever and recording audio directly from there to the camera, wirelessly, Bluetooth. That would be pretty sweet. I tried a quick ultra-wide field of view test, and surprisingly, the GoPro Super View actually looked wider. Plus, let's notice my skin tones. The One R is jacking up my skin pretty bad. There's a little bit too magenta in the blacks in my coat as well. The GoPro is far from perfect, but looking better in this shot. Here's a quick 4K 60 FPS comparison, and another win for the GoPro. Its field of view is wider, which is nice and makes a big difference. Plus the stability and sharpness of resolution, I think it looks much better here as well. With the 1-inch, we can max out slow motion, 1080p, 120 FPS. The GoPro can double this up to 240 FPS at the same 1080p res. Now that's a big win for GoPro. In this sample, I'd say GoPro wins in terms of quality, and I noticed GoPro's keeping a wider field of view again, which I think is a pretty big deal when you're shooting slow motion. Usually your subject is moving around very fast, and it's easy to cut the subject out of camera frame like I did here on the One R. Another thing to note, oddly enough, the sample clip from the One R actually has some frame blending and motion interpolation processing, so it's like we can slow the clip down even more. However, it doesn't necessarily look fantastic, but possibly better than glitching and stuttering like we can see here on the GoPro. Either way, I'd vote GoPro the winner in this slow motion test. One of my favorite modes to play around with is Hyperlapse, and both the cameras offer this feature, though they do it quite a bit differently. On the GoPro, before we hit record, we set the speed of playback from 2 times up to 30 times fast, or my favorite I've talked about before, there's auto mode, where the GoPro will automatically determine your camera movement and other factors and then speed up or slow down time, which ends up creating some really cool shots. There's a button on the screen to enable real-time recording in the middle of the hyperlapse, like you can see in this example. On the One R, it's slightly different. They instead approach the idea of recording the whole clip at normal speed, which results in much larger raw file sizes. Then later in the app is where we can adjust the speed settings. This is nice on one hand. It allows us to change the video file multiple times over, slowing it down or speeding specific spots back up. It allows us a lot more fine to control, which is nice. On the other hand though, I sort of like the GoPro mode as well. It's a bit more hands-off, just set it and forget it. Record your clip and that's it. No going back, changing anything. The video is locked in, but it's ready for sharing. There's pros and cons to each side. In terms of quality though, both of these files are 4K, and we can turn on or off that motion blur you're seeing on the One R. Again, it's nice to have the option. Now for the big low light video test, and this is one area I think the 1-inch mod really blows GoPro out of the water. It's that larger sensor is gonna help perform much better in lower light situations, at least for video. Now, not only does it of course look a bit brighter, but even more importantly, compare the amount of noise and grain between the two. The One R 1-inch looks clean, while the GoPro looks grainy, noisy, soft, and blurry. I also had to throw in the One R's 4K mod into the mix, and this is one of those areas people were really wondering, is the 1-inch really worth paying the extra money for? Well, hopefully this comparison can help you out. In this low light video test, we can clearly see the big quality bump from the 4K mod up to the 1-inch. Even I didn't know if there'd be that much of a difference, but here it sure looks like it. Now this is some low light video and 5.3K on the One R with indoor stabilization. So they say it should help with some of the motion blur, but the noise, I'm guessing the ISO gain is going up a little bit. So how did the two look and compare? Again, the 1-inch mod is looking much better with brighter exposure, cleaner image, and less noise. Plus, that low light stabilization checkbox actually seems to help, as its stability and motion blur looks much better over the GoPro. This is a pretty big deal for some people out there. If you're needing an action camera in low light conditions, well, the 1-inch mod might be much better for you over a GoPro. Snapping a few low light photos is very interesting and yielding some different results. In this first shot, GoPro's white balance looks much more accurate. With the comforter, it's actually white in real life. Zooming in 400%, the GoPro looks the noisiest and pixelated. However, the 4K wide mod is in last place, and the 1-inch is okay, but not amazing. This next shot has some more of the same results. Now, if the 1-inch could produce better white balance and lean away from those strong red hues, then I'd say it'd be a clear winner. Funny enough, our phones are getting much better in low light photography. So I tossed in a few iPhone 11 Pro night shots. I've talked about this before. The iPhone does not allow long exposure night shots in the ultra wide lens, though it does on the primary. Anyway, here you can see the results, and it's doing a fantastic job of bright exposure, dynamic range, and good noise control. Two more very low light shots, and we can see the magenta glitch, I'll call it, on the 1-inch, though it's a clean low noise image, which is nice. The GoPro isn't terrible and actually producing a usable shot, and the iPhone's night mode looks pretty good. This shot was almost in the pitch black, and the 1-inch basically failed. GoPro surprisingly wins with a nice long exposure, and the iPhone is the brightest, but it missed focus or it's just way too blurry, and that's sort of unfortunate. Here's some daytime photo samples with some harsh contrasty lighting, and my eye is consistently drawn to the 1-inch. Some of these are HDR, some are just standard photos with color plus tone mapping turned on, and these shots honestly look just as good as the HDR ones. Now on the GoPro, I use their new super photo mode, and in almost every shot, I prefer the 1-inch. Well, except this last one, they both botched up my skin color pretty bad. Now let's switch over to a few other categories of comparison that are sometimes or just as important as image quality. For mounting options, I think I like the GoPro better, and here's why. At least they give you these mounting fingers built right into the body. They fold in if you want, makes it nice and flush, portable, but then they fold down. You can slide it into the standard GoPro mounting system, even though it's still a little annoying. I wish it was 1/4 tripod mount, but there we go, you're up and away. With the One R, with the 1-inch mod, we have to screw this whole front glass off, slide it into the mount, clip that on. It has the mounting fingers here for standard GoPro mounts, and then screw this thing back on, and then reverse it for every single time you want to take it off. It's just super inconvenient. I really wish the One R had a 1/4 tripod mount built right in. Now I did see they have that extended battery pack coming out soon with the mounting fingers like the GoPro. That looks like a nice module to have, but until then, GoPro wins right now for mounting convenience. Two quick things to mention. Look at the boot up times. There's One R hitting GoPro even after. Boom. GoPro's up and ready to shoot. And there we go. So the GoPro's faster to boot up. And then as for screen brightness, well, it's sort of hard to tell out here, but we're in the bright sunlight. And honestly, the One R does a nice job, even though its screen is much smaller, but they're both fairly bright in the daytime so that we can see it even in the sunlight for exposure and tweaking settings. So both screens are nice and bright. However, the GoPro's is much larger, which is nice. But on the other hand, and it's a big win for the One R, we can simply break it apart, flip the screen around, and now we have a selfie screen. If you want to do that on the GoPro, well, you're gonna have to shell out the pretty penny of $80 for that media mod, and then another $80 on top of that for the display mod. So $160 just for that feels a little steep. For durability, well, I don't have the guts to be dropping these from great heights, nor do I have the money. I sort of baby these things like my firstborn, but I do say that the One R, it feels tight and rigid when it's all clicked together. And it's modular, so if something were to break down the road, I can replace just that part. And the GoPro's, well, its biggest fail this year was taking away that replaceable glass protector that they had years ago. Honestly, it's a big deal breaker for many. It almost seems like they're trying to get us to pay for that extra GoPro Plus replacement program. Another big deal to compare are mobile apps and workflow. Now don't worry, I'll keep this one short and sweet. It's a big win, I say, for the Insta360. I love their mobile app way more than GoPro's. Insta offers way more editing features, plus it's faster to connect, smoother and more efficient to scrub through the files over Wi-Fi, trim, edit, export, and share. Now, funny enough, on the flip side of that, Insta360 is recording these video files in a .insv file format. I think it's their proprietary file. Either way, they're not in .movs or MPEGs, and this could be a really big deal breaker for a lot of people out there. So if you're editing just simply on the mobile phone, not a big deal. But if you're like me and you need to copy these files over to your computer for Final Cut editing, well then it has to go through a whole transcoding, compression, converting process, which is super inefficient, and I really dislike it. I might have heard some rumors that Insta360 is pushing on an update down the road to fix this. I'm not sure. If you know any news, drop a comment. So I guess that's the irony of it all. If you want the best mobile editing experience, sharing right on the go, well then Insta might be your better bet. However, if you're sort of old school and you need to edit in Final Cut or Premiere, well then you might need to go with GoPro, at least until Insta fixes out that issue. And another big complaint I have is the minimum focusing distance on the 1-inch. It might be a deal breaker for me. If I'm holding it here, they say it's about 1 meter minimum focusing distance. Well, I might be out of focus and then everything behind me is in focus. Sort of ruins the shot. So if you're gonna be vlogging, you have to make sure it's held out far enough so that you're in focus. Just keep this in mind. At the end of the day, these are fun cameras and gadgets that are all but tools and toys, helping us to capture memories and moments to share with family and friends and clients. Now, if the tool gets in the way of creation, then it has failed at its job. For some people, the ONE R's modular design, future expansion, and sweet mobile editing workflow, that reversible screen, the great audio options, it might be the perfect match for you. And then maybe consider this 1-inch mod if you need some solid low light performance or that extra bump up in resolution and clarity. If, however, you just need something simple and easy and old school, durable, run and gun, shooting flat and only flat photos and videos, well then the GoPro HERO 8 Black still performs fantastically well in a lot of situations. Plus, that price point isn't horrible if you don't care about external audio or a reversible screen or replaceable lens. Its photos and videos look smooth and it's punchy, and it should be able to capture some beautiful moments for you. Now let me know which one you lean more towards and why down in the comments, and drop any questions you have. I'll try my best to respond. Until I see you next time, let's live AuthenTech.